Hey guys, it's Debbie. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, and if you have been here before, welcome to my channel. I started 2 minutes early because I couldn't wait because I just found something so cool. You guys are not going to believe what I just found. Remember the clip from Aussie Insider that I showed you guys? The compilation clip of lawyers reacting. Nancy, you are not. You have been here longer than anybody else. Judy, yes, you can. Stop messing with me. Yeah. I have had a rough morning. Don't be messing with me. Can you really not hear me? Everybody else can hear me. It's just you. Did anybody else get up and was like, it's here, it's here, it finally came, like it was Christmas morning? Judy, I thought you were messing with me. I got up. I slept good, actually. I slept good. I was surprised. But I woke up at 5:30 and I was like, yay! It's time to get up. It's here. It finally came. But I found this clip from Aussie Insider and I was like, I'm not going to play the whole thing, just the part that made my jaw drop. Do you guys recognize her? Wow, Judy. That's a little, that's a lot. That's a lot for this early in the morning. She looks a lot different now. That's Linda Kenny Bodden. Listen what she has to say about Hank Brennan.
I'm really done with Hank. I mean, Hank Brennan, I've told you before, and I've defended him. He's a very good attorney. He's doing what the prosecutor of the county hired him to do, the DA, be a tough prosecutor, try a case. But I have this problem when any prosecutor, and he now has the ethical duties of being a prosecutor, when he gets up there and he says at the very end that he had he never tried to prevent Arca from testifying. That was never his intention. I'm telling you right now, I believe that was always his intention. If you believe anything else, really? Are you kidding me? I mean, of course he was.
And so what we were looking for, not only Rule 14, but more.
That's the defense attorney from the Phil Spector case.
This all revolves, what's happening here revolves around the defense providing this report of Dr. Welcher. Now, the defense gets the permission, not just pay them for the past testimony.
StreamYard, knock it off. We have a big day today. You have to work.
Testimony for a bill that occurs after trial that they didn't know they were getting, but formally hire them. They send them Welcher's stuff as they're getting it now because they want him to respond. They want Arca to respond to what the prosecution is now giving them just before trial. And so And as they get stuff from the prosecution, they're basically almost like a rebuttal report, right? It's going to be a rebuttal report.
Ready? Here we go.
So she agrees with us about Hayden Brennan, believe it or not.
Actually, could the judge would say, look, if it depends on how you present Wexler prosecution. If ARCA goes in the defense case and you present Wexler as a rebuttal, then we could have Sir rebuttal. So I think that this was an absolute, shall we say, well, no, let me put it what it is. I think it's a misrepresentation. This is not what he's been worried about. And if it's only he's been worried about because he created that, the judge then may say, well, then you can't have ARCA respond.
Brennan's super paranoid about the DOJ.
Yes, he is. And that, I listened to Peter, he did a podcast episode with his dad, and they both say this is what Brennan is afraid of. He's afraid of ARCA.
Trying to get the defense, giving the defense no defense, I think is outrageous. I think it's irresponsible. I think it's terrible. And I have not been, as you know, one for, like, let's say we're a free counter movement. We're at this network. We're on what can the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But in doing so, you have to give the defense the ability to rebut what the prosecution attempts to prove. All right? Instead of saying, I have concerns about this going, he knows he created this bot, and now he's trying to cut
What they wanted. They didn't have to wait for ARCA witnesses.
Okay, that I just thought I because it was like 12 minutes until going live. And I was like, what can I watch that's 12 minutes long? And that one was like 25 minutes. And I was like, okay, well, I'll watch it like on 2x speed and see if I can watch it before it's time to go live. And then I saw her and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I have to show this to everybody. So then it was like 2 minutes left. And I was like, this is going to be the longest 2 minutes of my life. I was like, no, I'm going to go live early. I'm going live early because I have to. Oh, Terry, that's fine. If you guys have other things to do or other channels, you guys have lives. It's cool. There are days, like I'm in Big N's channel almost every night, but there are days that it's just like, I am not in the mood for body cam footage tonight, and I just do whatever else. We have lives where it's cool. I even told Judy, and I always forget to thank Judy. Thank you, Judy, for being an awesome mod and keeping us up to date on other cases while we're stuck, not stuck, but like we're like focused on one case while you keep us up to date on other stuff that's going on around the law tubes, and you're amazing. So, and researching stuff. So thank you for that. Cause I always forget to thank you, but, there are times that, I've told Judy, like, if you want to be in if there's something else you'd rather be in, go ahead. Like, you guys don't have to be here. Just, I know you love me. That's cool. You don't have to be here all the time. So I was going to try to get through a whole thing of Phil, but the next witness is like almost 2 hours long, and I ain't waiting that long. I'm ready for this thing. So we've got an outside the presence of the jury, which is like 20. Don't tell me how long you are. I did it earlier. No, like 12 minutes. And then the other thing is like an hour and 40 minutes. So we're going to stop at 9:30. And I didn't do it. I didn't do the portal. I'll try to do the portal. I don't know if StreamYard will let me. So at night we're going at 9:30. No, regardless of whatever else we're doing.
All right, the jurors and alternates have left. Mr. Jackson, you indicated you wanted a 402 hearing concerning the next witness, I believe.
Yeah.
Or Mr. Dixon.
Mr. Dixon's going to
Okay.
address those issues.
A couple things. The first, probably the simplest, is that we would ask that during the defense case, during the defense experts that are testifying, that their other experts be excluded from the courtroom.
We agree with that.
Okay. That's
Secondly, as we've mentioned throughout this case a number of times, it's our belief, for the reasons that we've said before, that the defendant's statements should not come in before this jury, either directly or as part of an opinion evidence. And we would ask the court to, we'd ask the court to make that ruling to the team, and if the quick record be rather specific with respect to Dr. DeMaio. And that is because in a very recent case in Arizona, it's State versus Wade. I can give you the number if you'd like. That's in the Superior Court of Arizona in Maricopa County before a Judge Arthur Anderson just this last May of this year. Dr. DeMaio was on the stand, and apparently there was the same type of order that statements of the defendant were not to be referred to either directly or as part of his opinion statements that he relied on. And Dr. DeMaio took the stand and immediately indicated that he had relied on the defendant's statement, but didn't go any farther than that. And if I could just read the court, what that court, Judge Anderson, said, he asked when this happened, he asked the jurors to leave the courtroom. They did. And the court went on and said, Doctor, there's an order in this case that you cannot render any opinions based upon. Are you aware of that? Dr. DeMaio, yes. I did that in reviewing Lord and Wade's statement in the litany of materials that you reviewed. Dr. DeMaio said, I did. The court said, you did. And then the court went on and said, just before coming out here, I asked the defense whether or not this witness had understood the admonition, and the defense had noted that they were concerned about this statement. He went on to say, the court, I'm not particularly comfortable that this was just an oversight in light of the fact that there was a bright line that we drew here for counsel and for the witness. Dr. DeMaio went on and said, well, it just happened. I just read a list of names, and that's what I did. I didn't realize his name, the defendant's name, was there. I didn't honestly even realize his name was there. And then the court, that's not enough. You're an expert witness. You're an educated man. There's certain rules here that are court orders that are in place in order to avoid such problems. And they went on from there. I'm sorry to take the court's time to that extent, but we think that this is something that Dr. DeMaio should be, if the court agrees with our position, be personally admonished about, not to cross that bright line if the court deems that there is such a bright line in this case.
Thank you. Defense?
Yeah, briefly, Your Honor. We're very cognizant of the court's previous in limine ruling, and it's our position that if we do intend to get into this area, I'm going to lay a foundation, but I would bring it up to the court before I broach the subject with the witness. This is the dilemma that we're in, is that Dr. DeMaio reviewed a lot of materials in this case, including statements of the driver, the defendant, etc. Some of those are in the coroner's office records and so forth. I don't believe he relies on any particular statement, whether it's the driver or anybody else, but he did review those materials. If the court wants us not to even mention the fact that he reviewed any of these records or one of these records, then if that's the order, that's the order. Dr. DeMaio is here, he'll abide by that. I think what happened in Arizona was he had a list of materials that he reviewed, and he just simply was reading from that, and that's what happened.
Well, actually, there'll be no need to approach me because the ruling I made previously on People versus Garderly, which is unfortunately cross-examination of witness, there was a stand, but it's the court statements of defendant or hearsay statements that are otherwise inadmissible of basically anybody can sometimes be considered by an expert in rendering an opinion, and then the jury is given an admonition. It is also very clear that that assumes that the hearsay statements have reliability because of the nature of the statements in this case, because of what the surrounding facts are, that the court is making a finding under 352 that basically it is way too prejudicial to allow any statements by the defendant because they are not reliable. They are not going to come in unless he testifies first or testifies at some point, in which case the witnesses can then be recalled and can ask if that changes their opinions in any way or assists them. But there will be no reference whatsoever to any statements from the defendant by any expert witness. They are unreliable as a matter of law. And certainly, in my opinion, under 352, they're not coming in, and each witness will be admonished appropriately that they are not to refer to any statements by Mr. Spector. If there's something in a report that's already been in or has nothing to do with this subject matter that you want to raise, that's something different. And you need to raise that. But any interview they've had with Mr. Spector or statements he's made that the people have chosen not to go into, and it's their decision whether those may be admitted into evidence, that they are to be admonished. They are not to refer to those statements. And if they do, the remedy is simple. That will end their testimony. Any testimony that they've already given will be stricken, and that's the end of it.
I understand the court's ruling. The only two exceptions to that, and I don't know that we'll even get into it, but I just want to make sure the record is clear, is that, and we do have these witnesses. In fact, we're going to try to call them this week. The two police officers, I believe they're Alhambra officers. One of them is when Mr. Spector motions them in initially. And the other one is when he says, go get my list of phone numbers in my jacket upstairs. In other words, I believe the court's ruling is that we go no further than those two. We've already broached those two. But again, I think that's, but I don't think those are big issues with this witness or the so. Just so that we're clear, I believe I tried to broach this subject with Dr. Pena. There are some statements in the coroner's records regarding Mr. Spector, and those are also off limits, or are they?
I don't know. I don't recall Dr. Pena's testimony.
I don't recall its exact testimony, but I do recall that there is in the investigative reports of the coroner's office and several other places, they talk about that there being conflicting statements. They don't get into they may get into the details, but they said there were conflicting statements as to Mr. Spector having the gun, etc.
Well, I don't know if you're going to have to pick those out and show them to me, and then I'll make a determination.
Yeah, my thought, or at least my request would be if one of the defense experts says that he noted that there were just conflicting statements without getting into the details, is that something that we shouldn't touch upon either?
Yes, because that's inferential that there have been by someone else conflicting. So we're staying away from the statements for the reasons stated.
Yeah, I think I did mention that with Dr. Pena. I can't remember whether that got objected to or what happened, but I think Mr. Rosen.
At this point, there's now an objection, and just because something was testified to in an earlier time, the off repeated, that's open the door, isn't necessarily so, and case law has made that very clear.
Okay.
All right, we ready to proceed?
Great, I'm ready to proceed.
Let's bring out the jurors and the alternates.
Dr. DeMille brought something up. He's very clear on the court's ruling regarding Mr. Spector. They've said nothing about a lot of other type of evidence. One of the things that Dr. DeMille looked at, for example, is mosquito information. The same thing Dr. Pena basically was given, etc. He did review that, and I think he considered that. And he feels very strong that that was an important part of his consideration of this case.
I'll hear from the people.
That's been, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I think the court made a ruling on the life story, if that's called diary.
Did the state
It says a statement. Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't say it yet.
So unreliable, and the court has made a finding specifically as to when, based upon the evidence, it ended. We still don't know. It's not a diary quote. It's a life story. And for those reasons, I've indicated it is unreliable, and the same holding undoubtedly applies to that. And he is going to have, if that changes opinion, you better talk to him outside of the jury.
I'd like to have an evidentiary hearing with Dr. DeMaio on that at some point.
It really doesn't, I don't need an evidentiary hearing. And it's the exact same, it's unreliable for the jury. I believe that a cautionary admonition is adequate in this case. It's an attempt to prove as independent facts on the basis that an expert says, well, I relied on it. And that's the danger, and that's the guard in allowing inadmissible hearsay. It's one of the things the court has to consider.
I've talked with Dr. DeMaio just briefly. He feels that as a medical examiner and a forensic pathologist, that state of mind type information and evidence should be all reviewed and considered. You should not just arbitrarily not consider it. And he feels that if he doesn't, and he actually did consider it, he feels it has certain
Oh, she stepped on the keyboard, guys.
just for him not to have done that. And what detail we get into as to what he can talk about is one thing, but I would like him to explain that to the court as to why he considered it and what his take on it was. In other words, his reasons as a pathologist were for doing that.
You can make an offer of proof. The bottom line is whatever pathologist is fine, but it does not trump the court's ability to make sure that the jury has only admissible and appropriate evidence to consider. And that I'm not going to allow the jury to consider inappropriate evidence that the people really don't have a chance to rebut, that is an attempt under the guise, in my mind, of attempting to put in inadmissible, independent proof, if you will, of the facts that the people can't challenge.
I would like, at least at some point, to have Dr. DeMaio, after he's been qualified as an expert, to explain that, just to have.
You can make an offer of proof at some later time. We're going to go forward with the jury at this point because it's not coming in.
Okay, and is he to not mention that he reviewed your computer materials?
Yes, because the court has found them to be.
How about the emails?
The emails from another individual that have been backed up, that clearly, that he may consider. It is this diary or this life story that the court has kept out. Emails that clearly, because you can date them, they're clearly generated by her for the purpose of communicating with someone else. Yes, that he may refer to. It's a diary that's not coming in.
Well, I understand it's not going to come into evidence, and he's not to mention it. Just so that we're clear, I don't want to run into problems, but in the emails and some of the things that are already into evidence, her drug history and so forth, he's going to mention that. And
it depends. What email are you referring to?
She stepped on the goat. If she had set that, if she had stepped on it hard enough to set it off, good Lord, we would have a mess everywhere.
Referring to, you're going to need to show me these exhibits that you plan on referring to that he relied upon to see if they've been discussed, if the court's made a ruling. I just don't want some generic email. You better stick emails that, all right, I want to make sure that it's not something the court has previously excluded.
Okay, the ones that we're thinking of are ones that are already marked and have been discussed.
Show them to me.
Okay, I don't know their numbers right now, but we'll.
Hang on. Mommy has to do a thing. Well, kind of hard to do with a cat in my way, but I'm working on it.
Presently unavailable, and until we have resolved the issue of those witnesses being called, the people will not rest. But rather than just wait for that to be resolved, the defense is now going to move forward with its case, and at a later time, the people may reopen their case. So that's how we're moving forward. Does the defense have any witnesses they wish to call?
I certainly do, Your Honor. We would call Dr. Vincent DeMaio.
All right, step forward, please.
Make evidence before. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Dr. Vincent J.M. DeMaio, D-I-M-A-I-O, with a capital D and a capital M.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Dr. DeMaio, what is your occupation, sir?
I'm a physician, a medical doctor, and at the present time, I'm in private practice of the field of forensic pathology.
I want to go through your background, education for the jury, and I want to start with your postgraduate training. I take it postgraduate from high school and college. Did you receive any special education in the field?
Well, in 19, I went to the State New York Downstate Medical Center in New York City, and I obtained my year of training at Duke Hospital in Durham, North Carolina, and 3 years of training in anatomical and clinical pathology at the Downstate Medical Center in New York City. I did a 5th year of training in the field of forensic pathology at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for the state of Maryland. Following that, I took my specialty board exams in the fields of anatomical, clinical, and forensic pathology and practical. I think they ran over about 2 days, 2.5 days. It's been a long time. Took the exam, passed the exam, and became certified as a specialist in the 3 fields of anatomical, clinical, and forensic.
Specific questions about these 3 subspecialties in the field of pathology.
Yeah.
Pathology is a specialty in the field of medicine, is it not?
Right. Pathology is the study and diagnosis of diseases. Pathology is the foundation. Before the pathologist found out what appendicitis was, found out what heart disease was, found out what tuberculosis was, people said, well, they had this wasting disease or consumption, it was called, like tuberculosis. Or people would die of acute indigestion. It was a heart attack, but they got abdominal pain. And then the pathologist started studying, says, well, wait a minute, that's heart disease. And so it's a study and diagnosis of diseases.
Okay, and so the anatomical pathology deals with the areas of the body, I take it?
Well, the anatomical pathologist works in a hospital and in the body. If you've had a breast biopsy, if you've had skin tag removed, it goes to the pathologist. The pathologist then examines it under the microscope and says, this is what this person has, and is it good or bad? And if it's like a cancer, how far it's spread? They then tell your doctor, your internist, or your surgeon, who then tells you. So if you have a diagnosis of cancer, it's actually not made by your surgeon, but it's made by the pathologist. The surgeon takes the tissue, gives it to the pathologist. He tells the surgeon tells you. And the only contact just runs the labs. You had a throat culture, you had a blood test, a urine test, ever have a transfusion. It's all through the clinical pathology laboratory, the laboratory that is run by a clinical pathologist. Okay. And so you go there, and then he examines you. And then he makes a diagnosis of the cause of death. Is it suicide or homicide?
Okay. And your board certified in all of these since the early 1970s, is that correct?
See, the first two, 70.
And after you became board certified in forensic pathology, did you have any military service in the field of pathology? And if so, what was that?
Right. After I finished my training, I then went into the Army. And I was in the Army for 2 years. I was a major. I was assigned to the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, D.C., which is a tri-service, Army, Navy, Air Force service, or it was there. They're thinking of closing it now to save money. And what it did was all the pathology consultations, that's for the most part, reviews, went to this institute. And I was, the first year, I was charged of the medical legal section.
Okay. When you say wound ballistics, what do you mean by that?
Essentially, wounds due to, I had custody of what was called the wound med study. It's exactly wound, WOUND, MED.
Okay.
And essentially, what that study was an attempt to evaluate the effects of different weapons on people by examining the soldiers who were injured. Remember, this is during the Vietnam War. So we had all these people who were injured and some people who were autopsied. And so what they did was, most of them actually didn't die, but they would interview them in 35 millimeter slides in my possession.
All right, Stringer, don't start now. Mean it. I'm not going to be happy if you do this through the trial.
Essentially what I do is consultations. People need the aid of a forensic pathologist, call me up. Now, I don't advertise or anything like that. People get my name if they want a forensic pathologist. They'll call me up. I'll listen to them. If the case is interesting, I'm retired now to a certain degree, so I choose. That I work the case.
Okay. Presently, do you have any position with reference to any type of medical journal?
Oh, yes, Medicine and Pathology, which is the only forensic pathology journal published in the United States. And it's a peer-reviewed journal. If you're in forensic pathology and you want to publish a paper, it generally gets published in the...
Stop it!
How long have you been the editor-in-chief?
1992.
Okay.
I think 1990. I forget now. It's been a while. Yeah, 1990. What happens is the people who want to publish an article, it's sent in to me. I then choose people to evaluate it with a critique, their opinion as to whether it's good or not, or their defects. It then comes back to me, and then I evaluate their evaluations, and I decide whether to print it or not.
Okay, and this journal, the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology, you mentioned it's the only forensic pathology journal in the United States. Is it relied upon by pathologists, forensic pathologists who do autopsies and determine cause and manner of death?
Yes, it's the official journal of the National Association of Medical Examiners. The National Association of Medical Examiners is an organization to which most forensic pathologists in the United States belong. And you pay your dues, and you also get the Orange Journal as well.
Dr. DeMaio, is it published outside of the United States? Is it to people?
20% of our subscriptions are outside the United States as well.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the National Association of Medical Examiners. Do you have any positions with that organization?
Yes, I'm on the board of directors of it, and I'm also on two committees. One is the Strategic Planning Committee. That is, it's a committee that gets together and plans where the organization is going to go over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. The second committee I'm involved with has to do with the establishments of standards for the practice of forensic pathology. So, for you're doing autopsies, forensic autopsies, until October of 2005, there were no standards. You could do anything you wanted. And then in October 2005, this committee and finally got the National Association of Medical Examiners to adopt standards and what you should do in an autopsy, what types of autopsies you should do, how you should do them, how it should be documented.
Okay, can you tell the jury basically what type of an organization this National Association of Medical Examiners is? In other words, who belongs, what's its role in the forensic pathology community?
Essentially, it's organizations of physicians, all of whom are in the medical legal field. And virtually everybody who practices forensic pathology, virtually anybody who's in the field, belongs to the National Association of Medical Examiners.
Do they have scientific conferences?
Yes. We have in the fall, we'll have a full-blown conference that goes for a number of days. Usually it's in October. And then in February, when the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, which is a more general forensic thing, it's not just forensic pathology, meets, we have a half-day meeting at that. That's for continuity's sake.
Okay.
Drivers can come up with a lot of excuses after an accident. The bike was speeding. The bike was reckless. The biker was ill.
Nope, not yet. Well, now it just froze. Come on, what are you doing now, stupid thing? Oh, this is not the day. Today is not the day. I'm ready to spill. Today's not the day.
The jurors and alternates are now back. Ladies and gentlemen, the people are not resting at this time because there is the possibility, or there at the present time, there's some, at least one or perhaps more witnesses that are presently unavailable. And until we have resolved the issue of those witnesses being called, the people will not rest. But rather than just wait for that to be resolved, the defense is now going to move forward with how we're moving forward. So at this point, does the defense have any witnesses they wish to call?
I certainly do, Your Honor. We would call Dr. Vincent DeMaio.
All right, step forward, please.
I can't talk. I don't know what's going on.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you.
Forensic pathology. That's right. Okay.
See, the first two, 70, forensic pathology, 71.
And after you became board certified in forensic pathology, did you have any military service in the field of pathology? And if so, what was that?
Right. After I finished my training, I then went into the Army. And I was in the Army for 2 years. I was a major. I was assigned to the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, D.C., which is a tri-service, Army, Navy, Air Force service. What it did was all the pathology consultations, that's for the most part, reviews, went to this institute. And the first year I was charged of the medical legal section. The second year I was charged of the wound ballistics section.
Okay. When you say wound ballistics, what do you mean by that?
Wounds due to firearms, wounds due to military weapons. I had custody of what was called the wound med study. It's exactly wound, W-O-U-N-D, M-E-D.
Okay.
And essentially evaluate the effects of different weapons on people by examining the soldiers who were injured. Remember, this is during the Vietnam War. So we had all these people who were injured and some people who were autopsied. And so what they did was, most of them actually didn't die, but they would interview them and they'd get the medical records and they'd take photographs. I had 50,000 35 millimeter slides in my possession. And then it was put together in an attempt to have a research basis so that they would be able to evaluate the effects of different weapons.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, after you worked with the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology and did the things that you did, I take it you had other positions in your career. Have you ever, you mentioned that you worked as a consultant in the field of forensic medicine and pathology. What do you generally do nowadays? In other words, what's your normal course of business?
Essentially what I do is consultations. People need the aid of a forensic pathologist, they call me up. Now, I don't advertise or anything like that. People get my name. If they want a forensic pathologist, they'll call me up. I'll listen to them. If the case is interesting, I'm retired now to a certain degree, so I choose. If I feel that I want to work the case, then I work the case.
Okay. Presently, do you have any position with reference to any type of medical journal?
Oh, yes. I'm the editor of the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology, which is the only forensic pathology journal published in the United States. And it's a peer-reviewed journal. If you're in forensic pathology and you want to publish a paper, it generally gets published in the journal that I'm the editor of.
Holding up an orange, it's the journal that you're the editor-in-chief of, is that correct?
Right. The name's long. Everyone refers it as the Orange Journal. So
Okay.
You actually said what people call it, the Orange Journal.
And how long have you been the editor-in-chief?
1992. I think
Okay.
1990. I forget now. It's been a while. Yeah, 1992.
And as the editor-in-chief, what do you do to edit this journal?
Essentially what happens is the people who want to publish an article, it's sent in to me. I then choose people to evaluate the article. The article goes to these people. They then evaluate it, write up a critique, their opinion as to whether it's good or not, or there are defects. It then comes back to me, and then I evaluate their evaluations, and I decide whether to print it or not.
Okay, and this journal, the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology, you mentioned it's the only forensic pathology journal in the United States. Is it relied upon by pathologists, forensic pathologists who do autopsies and determine cause and manner of death?
Yes, it's the official journal of the National Association of Medical Examiners. The National Association of Medical Examiners is an organization to which most forensic pathologists in the United States belong. And you pay your dues, and you also get the Orange Journal as well.
Dr. DeMaio, is it published outside of the United States? Is it to people?
20% of our subscriptions are outside the United States.
Examiners, do you have any positions with that organization?
Yes, I'm on the board of directors of it, and I'm also on two committees. One is the Strategic Planning Committee. That is, it's a committee that gets together and plans where the organization is going to go over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. The second committee I'm involved with has to do with the establishments of standards for the practice of forensic pathology. So, for you're doing autopsies, forensic autopsies, until October of 2005, there were no standards. You could do anything you wanted. And then in October 2005, this committee and finally got the National Association of Medical Examiners to adopt standards and what you should do in an autopsy, what types of autopsies you should do, how you should do them, how you document.
Okay, can you tell the jury what type of an organization this Association of Medical Examiners is? In other words, who belongs, what's its role in the pathology community?
Actually, it's organizations, physicians, all of whom are in the medical legal field. And virtually everybody who practices forensic pathology, virtually anybody who's in the field, belongs to the National Association of Medical Examiners.
Do they have scientific conferences?
Yes. We have in the fall, we'll have a full-blown conference that goes for a number of days. Usually it's in October. And then in February, when the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, which is a more general forensic thing, it's not just forensic pathology.
Yes, we are at 9:30. We are going to jump over there.
Meets. We have a half-day meeting at that. That's for continuity's sake.
Okay. The National Association of Medical Examiners, do you know whether or not the Los Angeles Medical Examiner Coroner's Office belongs to that, or any members?
Oh, yeah. It's accredited by the National Association of Medical Examiners.
Now, I want to move on to any prior positions that you may have had prior to your retirement. When did you retire?
I retired December the 31st of last year.
Okay. And what did you retire from? What position?
Okay, well, after I got out of the Army,
okay,
I moved to Dallas, Texas. That was in 72. And from 72 to 81, I was a medical examiner in Dallas. And I started out as just a plain medical examiner, ended up as the deputy chief. And then in the end of 1980, I was offered the position of chief medical examiner for Bexar County, Texas. And March 1st, 1981, I became chief medical examiner of Bexar, which none of you have probably heard of with that name. So 20s, and the county population's about 1.5 million people.
Okay, and as the chief medical examiner, what were your duties?
Essentially to make sure that correct determinations and cause of manner of death are determined on all individuals dying violently or suddenly and unexpectedly in Bexar County, to perform autopsies when necessary, or to have autopsies performed by other members of the staff who did it. When I retired, there were a total of 5 doctors on the staff and a total of maybe 40 employees, I think, something like that.
Could you tell the jury, members of the jury, what the different functions are of a medical examiner's office, given the fact that you ran one for those years since 1981 to your retirement?
You're saying how it's organized and what it does, right?
Yeah, organize what it does, like the different positions.
Right. Essentially, they're in a complete medical examiner system that is a fully functional type. You have the investigative section, and these are not physicians. These are lay investigators who you send out to the scene. You know, at one time, doctors would go to death scenes, but the problem is there's too many doctors. I mean, there's not too many doctors. There's too many dead and too few doctors. In the whole United States, there are maybe 500 full-time practicing pathologists. And that's probably too high a number. It's probably less than that, somewhere between 400 and 500. And so what happens is you have an investigative section, and the investigators go to the scene, and they essentially talk to people, find out what happened, and take photographs, make diagrams, and prepare a report. And this report and photographs then go to the medical examiner. And this is the second division. Then you have the medical division. Essentially, with the physicians, are the ones who do the autopsies, who examine the bodies, who draw fluids, who make conclusions as to the cause and manner of death. Now, you're not supposed to, contrary to what you see on TV, is touch the body until you get the investigative report. When you don't do autopsies blind, you have to know what's going on. So what will happen is the investigators will not only go to the scene, but they'll get medical records, they'll talk to next of kin, they'll get information, and they prepare a report telling you what's going on. So you don't go in blind. And then you do the autopsy. And then, of course, you dictate them, and that goes to the clerical section. That's section 3. And the last step of autopsy, you'll take body fluids and drugs, body fluids, tissue from the body, and submit it to what's called the toxicology laboratory, which is their chemists, and they analyze this material for the presence of alcohol and drugs. And then, in the end, the medical examiner puts it all together. The investigative report, the autopsy report, and the toxicology, and then makes their ultimate to what killed the person and how it came about. Essentially, the medical examiner, and the way I've been describing it, works exactly like your own physician. When you go to a doctor, what you're taught in medical school, the way you laboratory, you go to a doctor and he asks you, what's wrong with you? I got a pain, away with milk. That he takes your medical history, and then he does his physical. He prods you, listens to your chest, cough, open your mouth, look in your eyes, does things like that. That's the physical. And then he says, culture.
really don't want to turn my camera off because I hate it. I know I'm weird, but I hate it when creators don't have their camera on because I feel like they're hiding something. And I know that's not true, but still. And I don't know that I'll have new people, but I want to have new people. And there's a potential for new people because this is a giant trial that the whole public knows about. You know what I mean? Come on, StreamYard, you're killing me.
Makes a diagnosis. The forensic pathologist does the same thing. I just described it, but our patients don't talk to us. And so what happened is, and from the medical records, and from getting straight, and our physical is a little more thorough than you get. We do the autopsy, and then we do the tests. And the tests may just be toxicology, or maybe have the crime lab do examination of firearms or DNA and other. And then you put that all together, and independently of these other agencies, you make a ruling as to the cause and manner. Homicide, you send a copy.
That's Court TV. That's not StreamYard. Quit buffering.
Retired. At the end, I was a professor, part-time professor. And what happens is, if you go into pathology, it's simply a month.
Get up, say what's on your CV, and then start answering questions. We don't need to know stories about every case you've ever done crap. Like, what trial was it? The Linda Sturmer trial. That one guy the fire inspector guy wanted to tell stories about a whole bunch of past cases. It's like, no, we don't want that right now.
In a forensic pathology program to see what forensic pathologists do and to see disease. And so what untreated disease. And so what happens is they would send, one was the University of Texas Health Science Center, and the other one was run by the U.S. military. And it was combined Army, Air Force type training. And so we would get the military doctors and the doctors from the university, and we have them for a 1-month program to introduce them to forensic pathology, and hopefully to convert them and tell them they should go into our field and not hospital pathology. And at the same, besides that, my office also had one of only about 45 programs that were allowed to train forensic pathologists. Suppose you do your hospital, but you have to go to a 45.
So you would teach physicians that were in training, is that true?
Right.
Dr. DeMaio, did you ever work as a consultant for the Assassination Records Review Board in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, that was concerned with the I don't know if you call it declassification, the term. It had to do with a bunch of evidence and x-rays and things like that. And before they permitted, quote, the public access to it, they wanted some forensic pathologists to go down and take a look at it. And I took a look at it, and they weren't really, they said, well, is there anything more we could do?
Okay, camera off it is.
So they declassified it.
Okay, you were,
Official board, I was selected as one of the people to take a look at the stuff.
okay. Dr. DeMaio, with reference to your,
Good Lord.
any relationship with that particular journal?
Yes, I was on their board from 1980 to 2000, 20 years. I was on that board of editors.
Okay, and when you're on a board of editors for a journal that publishes, you have to review papers and.
Right, that's where I said I sent them off to these people. And there I was one of the recipients who read it and then sent it off to the main editor.
Okay, so just so I can understand sort of the dynamic of this, if I were a doctor and I submitted a forensic pathology paper to the Journal of Forensic Sciences, you might be one of the people that would review it and then critique it and send it back to me for review. Is that correct?
Okay, no. Okay, let's get it. You write the paper, you send it to the editor-in-chief,
Okay.
who would then send it to me. I'd write my critique, and then send it back to him, and then he'd talk to you.
Okay. And you did that for a number of years, I take it.
20 years.
And were the types of papers that you reviewed for publication for the Journal of Forensic Sciences, were they in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes, there were forensic pathology articles.
Okay. Now, did you have any position with the College of American Pathologists?
I was on their editorial board as well. And I'm also on the editorial board of a journal called Legal Medicine, which is a Japanese journal, published in English.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, as far as your profession, what type of professional organizations does a forensic pathologist belong to keep up with the developments in the field?
The most important is the National Association of Medical Examiners. And then there's, of secondary would be the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
Okay. Now, I take it, Dr. DeMaio, that you were in reviewing, as the editor of the pathology journal that you mentioned, it's a reviewer for the Journal of Forensic Sciences. Did you ever have occasion to actually publish any articles or journal or books in the field of pathology?
Yes. You mean, have I written articles? Yes.
Written articles,
I've written articles.
published them, written any books? Let's start with books. Have you ever published any books in your specialty field of pathology?
Essentially, yes. Okay. I've written 4 books. I wrote a book. My most recent book is called Excited Delirium Syndrome. And I'm the junior author in that book. The senior author is my wife, who is a nurse, who has a bachelor degree in nursing and also a letter in forensic nursing. I then have another book called Handbook of Forensic Pathology, which I wrote with one of my doctors, Dr. Dana. The third book is Forensic Pathology, which is a general textbook of forensic pathology. I wrote that with my late father, who was chief medical examiner of New York City. And then the fourth book is Gunshot Wounds, which I wrote by myself.
Okay. This fourth book, Gunshot Wounds, is this book here that I'm holding up now, second edition?
Yes.
Okay. When did you write the first edition? When was the first edition of this book, if you can recall approximately?
I think it was 85. It took me 11 years to write the first one.
Okay. And do you know whether this book is available to forensic pathologists in the United States?
Oh, yeah. It's available to anybody. Amazon.com, you can buy it if you're interested.
Do you know whether it's published in other countries in other languages?
The first edition was published also in French. The second edition is also published in Spanish.
That last publication, that last book deals not with just the general field of forensic pathology, that specialty by itself, but gunshot wounds. How did you develop your interest in that subspecialty of gunshot wounds?
Somehow I developed problems. And then when I went into forensic pathology, I started to get an interest in forensic pathology. I started to read the textbooks. And the textbook out when I went into forensic pathology was a book, I'm trying to remember the name of it. But it was there was the standard textbook of pathology. It was by Gonzalez, Vance, Halpern, and Umberger. And when I read the book on gunshot wounds, it didn't really make sense, some of their descriptions. And I realized what happened was, and they were still using black powder cartridges rather than smokeless powder. So their descriptions were all screwed up because they weren't differentiating between them. And so that's when I started, just before Dr. Spitz's book was published. Spitz's book came out later. And so I said, there's something wrong. And I began to get an interest in it. And then when I trained in both of them, I was having to do with firearms. And then when I went into the military, I went into, I was put in the wound ballistics section, which had to do with research using both civilian and military weapons. And I continued my work on firearms and firearms research when I went to Dallas. I have just continued.
Before you go on, ladies and gentlemen, does anybody on the jury need a break? No, had one. Anybody? Diana, how you doing? You okay? We're going to try to, because we're on a short schedule today, I want to try to get as much time as we can. So
very good, thank you. Dr. DeMaio, in addition to publishing the textbooks or the books that you just mentioned, particularly the book on gunshot wounds, have you published reviewed articles gunshot?
I've published a total of 83 articles, scientific letters, and 10 book chapters. And I would say, I don't know, a good quarter of that, a quarter to maybe a third of the articles and book chapters have to do with gunshot wounds.
Okay, I'm going to read one of them from your curriculum vitae just as an example. And this is cites a publication from the Journal of Forensic Science, Variations in Wounding Due to Unusual Firearms and Recently Available Ammunition. Is that the type of article that you might publish, something unique like that?
Right, I published that early in my career. I think, is Dr. Spitz a co-author on that?
I believe he is, at least yes, according to that. And another one, firearms, wound ballistics that you published in the Journal of the Association of Firearm and Tool Mark Examiners. Is that?
Yeah, Journal, after Journal, Association of Firearm Tool Mark Examiners.
Okay. Now, have you ever, in your career, have you ever had any work that you've done in for the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Well, yes. Yes. Back in, I guess it was the 80s, the Federal Bureau of Investigation became dissatisfied with the weapons that their agents were carrying, which were predominantly .38 specials. And they decided to go over to semi-automatic pistols. And everyone does it. Not everyone carries semi-automatic pistols nowadays, but years ago, that was a big change. And so they formed this group, and I was part of it, and we acted as consultants to the FBI, and they wanted to decide whether to adopt a 9mm pistol or a .45 caliber pistol. And so we had the meeting, the group split down the middle, and the FBI adopted neither. They adopted what eventually became the 40 S&W. And there was another meeting having to do with that too. So right, I was an advisor in their kind of selection of calibers and weapons.
Are you familiar with the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin?
Yes.
Is it a publication by the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Yes, it is.
And have you ever published any articles in that particular publication?
Yes, I have.
Have you published articles regarding the comparison of the wounding effects of commercially available handgun ammunition suitable for police use?
Yes.
In this subspecialty that you have in the field of forensic pathology, do you ever deal with ammunition, types of guns, wounds that are created by those weapons?
Oh, yes. Essentially, my area of interest is the difference in the wounding effects of different ammunitions and different weapons. And that's what my research was. And also research on basic facts having to do with the wounding capability of bullets, even the effects of powder on the body.
Okay.
Gunpowder.
When you say powder, is that like sooting or tattooing and things of that nature?
Essentially, powder tattooing, marks on the skin produced by powder grains that strike the skin.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, regarding your background, but before I do that, I want to ask you whether you've ever published any articles in other medical journals other than forensic journals. Let's say, for example, the New England Journal of Medicine.
Oh, yes.
And did it typically deal with forensic pathology issues that you would publish in that journal?
Right. Everything I would say, all but about 2 of my articles are on forensic pathology, so it's really simple.
Okay. The experience that you have in the field of forensic pathology, in addition to your work with these particular journals and you're writing these books and so forth, do you have experience in actually doing autopsies?
Oh, yes. I started doing forensic autopsies when I started training, and I did my last forensic autopsy in October of last year.
Okay.
I've done forensic autopsies for my whole career.
And when you say a forensic autopsy, that means the complete examination through the investigative system that you were working for at the time?
Yes, essentially. It's everywhere I've been, they've had the same system. Investigators, medical section, clerical, toxicology.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, with reference to the number of autopsies that you've ever done, can you give us just an estimate as to how many you've done in your career?
I've done about 9,000 and then supervised maybe 27, 30,000, something like that.
The ones that you supervise, is over 30,000, would those be for other doctors that were working under your direction?
Right, yes.
Okay, and could you explain to the members of the jury essentially what's involved in actually doing an autopsy? Sort of what's a competent medical examiner do when he's going to do a forensic autopsy?
Okay. First, you do an external examination of the body. And you don't want the body touched prior to you doing the external. So you look at the body, say if it's clothed, see what they're wearing, make a general description of how the body appears. You may collect trace evidence from the body at that time. You then remove the clothing and re-examine the body unclothed. And you'll examine the clothing again. And if there are any injuries on the body, you want to see if there's corresponding defects or trauma to the clothing. You'll then clean the body to get a better, if it's covered with blood and such. You'll clean the body to get a better view of it. You'll examine the body then. You'll note down any other injuries or disease processes that you've missed when it was covered with, say, blood. Then you will go on to the internal examination. You examine the internal organs as they lie in the body. You'll take body fluids at this time, such as blood, urine, vitreous, which is the fluid from the eye. Then you remove the internal organs, dissect them, and if necessary, and you'll take pieces of tissue from each organ and retain them, and if necessary, you'll make microscopic slides from these tissues. And that is the physical part of the autopsy. But when forensic pathologist refers to an autopsy, they also mean you take into account the investigation and the toxicology. But the physical part of the autopsy, the mechanical thing, is what I've just described.
Okay. And part of doing an autopsy, does it involve you learning about the scene where the death occurred?
Yes.
And how do you do that, and what type of information do you want to learn regarding the scene?
You can go to the scene and visit it yourself, or in some areas you have your investigators do it, and you look at the photographs. It's very easy now with digital cameras because you can see everything immediately. And so what you're looking at the scene for is for factors or evidence or alterations that might have an effect on how you're going to rule the cause of death and how you are going to deduce how the injuries occurred. You know, what was the position of the person, if you can tell. Things like that. Is there any objects around that may have been associated with the body that there may be trauma?
Okay. So you try to learn as much as you can about the scene, the death scene, is that correct?
Right. You're taking a history. You're just like you're asking a member of the jury what's wrong with them. You're getting a history. You're going back. It's like you get the old medical records. You get what's there. And that's what you want to see.
Okay. How about crime laboratory reports that get generated as a result of criminal investigations or things of that nature?
Right. You obtain the crime laboratory reports, and it depends on the cases. I mean, some cases are really simple, and some cases, you don't need crime lab report if somebody dies of a heart attack or certain things. It depends. And then what you have to do, but if it's a difficult case, you then integrate everything you have: the scene, the autopsy, and the laboratory results. And then you put that together, issue your conclusion.
Okay. And essentially, you ultimately issue a death certificate. Is that the ultimate end of the investigation?
In a way, what you do is you complete the autopsy report, and often the death certificate is issued before it's complete, and then you're finished with the case. However, no case is ever finished. If somebody comes to you 5 or 6 years later down the line, you may reopen it. We've done that occasionally.
Okay. Dr. DeMaio, I want to get into another area of your background and experience. And you mentioned that you've done personally over 9,000 autopsies.
Okay, this is a good place to stop. Also, I can't wait any longer. So, let me see if we can portal over. If I can get my computer to cooperate. I'm so excited. Okay. Yes, you did. You did. I got my first paycheck. Okay. Everybody keep your arms and legs inside the portal at all times. Here we go.